Hi, this video is for anyone who needs a refresher on how to research stocks or was not able to attend the meeting where I went through how to research stocks. Either way, you probably already know how to get to the Canvas site because you found this video. So here's what I'm going to talk about is that in another video I'll talk about how to actually buy a stock using the stock market game website. But I'm going to take a look in this video at a couple of the resources available that I have listed on Canvas. So to start off with, while you're watching this video, I highly recommend that you have this pulled up, the key terms for the stock market game. If you have this pulled up, it will look like this. It is a Google slide or a Google Doc, so it kind of has 3 pages to it. The first page is just a bunch of terminology as far as what's a stock, a mutual fund, a Dow Jones, NASDAQ, S&P. The ones that I'm going to be dealing with today is going to be the second and third page where it talks about research terms. So I'm going to run through that today. So I would suggest that you have that pulled up. Okay. While you have the key terms pulled up, I am also going to pull up Yahoo Finance. You could use Yahoo Finance or MSN Money. Either one are good places to start when researching for stocks, but I honestly learned on Yahoo Finance, so that's personal preference. So I'm going to pull this up, and as you can tell, I think that's, yeah. That's a picture of some guy from the Fed. So at the top it has a search engine at the top. This is where you're going to search for a stock that you're looking for. We'll talk about it in a little bit as far as how do you go about choosing a stock to research. But for this video's sake, what we're going to do is that we're just going to pull up a company. You can start with companies that you know, the ones that you know you bought products from. Start to look at labels on things. And you know, pay attention to what's going on in the media as far as companies that have new products coming out. So we're going to start with Apple, just because everybody knows Apple. Now, once I start typing in Apple, notice that I have a couple things that come up. The first thing, it says American Apparel. That's not what I wanted. The next one says Apple Inc. Okay, this is the company I wanted. Pay attention to the company name underneath. But when you click on it, this will bring in the information about Apple particularly. And when you are pulling up Apple in the future, this is the ticker symbol. This is the ticker symbol that you would want to know. AAPL is Apple's ticker symbol. And when you are going to put into the stock market game website that you want to buy Apple, for example, you would put in AAPL. All right, now I will tell you that I am making this video when the market is open. The market is open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. It is currently 10:35, and so as you can tell, I'm watching this video, you can watch the numbers change as I'm sitting here talking. So a couple of things to notice on here. These numbers up here, these big numbers, this is going to be fluctuating as I'm sitting here talking. The 114.35, this is what the current price of Apple is currently as of right now, what it's trading at, and as you can tell, it just switched. This is the green numbers is telling you what it has been doing since the last time the market was open, which was last Friday. So the previous close tells you that Friday's close, the Friday's closing price of Apple was 113.45. And so far right now, the stock is up 95 cents, which is a gain of 0.84%. So it gives you an idea of where it's at compared to, for example, Friday, because that was, I'm looking at on a Monday. What else? The opening price is whatever Apple opened at this morning when the market opened at 9 a.m. The bid and ask is just talking about as far as when people are actually looking to buy and looking to sell. Don't worry about that. The other thing that I would suggest that you look at is this range. This is the 52-week range. This is telling you the lowest price that Apple has been at in the last year and the highest price that Apple's been at in the last year. So as you can tell, the lowest price has been $92, the highest price $134.54. So how do you want to use that? Well, you want to take a look at what Apple's currently trading at, which is 114.48, and that's going to be somewhere in the middle in here, right? It's kind of almost towards the low end, really. So it kind of gives you an idea of where they've been trading at in the last year, how high it's been, how low it's been. You can also take a look at how that compares within the day. So the days range has been so far not a big change. Obviously, it fluctuates, not even $1 today so far. But again, as the day goes on, that day's range may fluctuate more. But it gives you an idea of, okay, this day's range is, they're trending in that range, right around what it's currently trading at. So it is not anywhere near its 52-week range, for 52-week high, I mean. So it just gives you an idea of where they're trading at. This would also be helpful when looking at this chart. So this chart to the right here, it's a little miniature. You can actually blow it up by pressing the Open Interactive Chart. And when you pull it up, this is actually for the last 3 months. You can tell at the top where it says 3 months, and if it could hover over it, it'll be a drop-down menu, and you can choose if you want to look at the 1 day, the 5 day, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 2 year, 5 year, 10-year max. Year to date is going to be how it's done since January. Okay, so it gives you an idea. But what I wanted to point out here is that I would suggest that you look at the 3 months. Anything longer than that, I mean, the game that we're playing is a 10-week game, and so it is, in that regards, it's not like real life, because in real life you want to be looking for a company that is going to produce for you over the long period of time. You're hopefully going to buy a stock and hold on to it for years, right? In the game, we only have 10 weeks, so you're looking for a quick, fast fix, right? You're trying to get something in, get out, get something good. So keep that in mind. So that's why I would suggest 3 months. But if you're looking at real life, you're looking at something longer than that. So you can tell by the last 3 months for Apple, Apple has been very volatile. It's moved a lot in price. You can tell that there's lots of hills and valleys and dips and plains here. Just look at the difference. For example, the highest point was back in July 20th, on July 20th in the, I can't move my cursor, otherwise it'll go to a different date, but in the left-hand corner there of the chart, you can see that little box that says open, close, low, high, volume, percent change. Okay, that tells you, look at the closing price. Okay, that tells you what the price of Apple was on the close of that day. It was 132.07, which, if you remember from the last screen, the 52-week high for Apple was 134. So that was actually pretty high. That was very close to its 52-week high. But then look at the lowest point in the last 3 months. So the lowest point was back in August 24th, and the closing price there was $103.12. That was a drop of almost $30 a share in less than a month. Okay, because that high point was July 20th, the low point is August 24th. I point this out to you to show you that the market is very volatile right now. What I mean by that is there's a lot of changes going on. There's a lot of fluctuations, which can be a good thing from the standpoint of, in our 10-week time period, we're going to see a lot of fluctuations. And if you time it right, and if you look into the right things and you play the right positions, you could still really make some good money off from it. But it's going to be movers and shakers right now. Okay. Now, the other thing that I wanted to, so I want you to pay attention to, okay, what's the general trend of Apple? So you can kind of see, all right, there's some movement and everything. But here's what I can tell you is that this August 24th date right there, I'm telling you right now, that was a bad day for almost every stock. That was when the market was down by a lot. Now, I know that because I listen to the news and I've heard, I pay attention to what's going on in the market. But if you didn't know that, how would you know that? Well, if you go up here in the comparison box, if you click on that, you can go and compare it to the Dow, the NASDAQ, and the S&P 500. Now, if you have that key terms sheet pulled up, it will tell you what the difference are between these three. But basically, these are what I call measures of performance. They're measuring how the stock market is doing as a whole. It used to be there was a lot of differences between, as far as the Dow used to just measure the New York Stock Exchange. the S&P would measure both the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ. NASDAQ only measures the NASDAQ. Now the differences are a lot smaller. The big differences between them is that how many companies are on each measure of performance. So the Dow has 30 companies. What I mean by that is they have 30 companies from the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ. So they take a little bit of each to add up to 30 companies. And then they look at how much those 30 companies has changed from one day to the next. So when they report on the news the Dow was up 2 points today, that means that as a whole, those 30 companies as a whole on average were going up. Now the point system, yeah, that can be confusing, and I'm not going to explain how they calculate that, but basically what they're telling you is that those 30 companies were up today. Okay, NASDAQ, same thing. NASDAQ is 100 companies. It's just looking at companies just on the NASDAQ though. The S&P 500 is 500 companies on the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ. So it just kind of gives you a measuring stick to be able to compare your company to. So I'm going to pick the S&P 500 and I'm going to compare the Apple to the S&P 500. So look at this. Now it adds this red line, and you can see that there's a lot of similarities and there's kind of mimicry between the S&P 500 and Apple. And so you can kind of, especially right here. So notice when I told you that August 24th was a bad day as a whole, you can tell that, yeah, it was. Look at the S&P 500 took a big dive there. You can tell that Apple's just mimicking the S&P 500. Now, I will be honest and tell you that Apple is on the S&P 500. It's one of their 500 companies, but it's not the only company. So it's telling you that all of the companies were kind of following this. Okay, but there are some things that you should pay attention to when you're comparing it to something like the S&P. Look at back in, for example, July. This is a good example of this. Look at the S&P. The S&P had, you know, this nice rounded hill here, but Apple saw this huge spike. Okay, that tells you that something specifically is going on with Apple. If it's just mimicking what the S&P is doing, like for example back down here in August, okay, this is just telling you that Apple's just following the rest of the curve. They're following the rest of the companies. But this spike back in July, that tells you there's something with the Apple particularly. The other thing you can do with comparison is you can also compare to an individual company that is a competitor of theirs. So for example, I could type in Microsoft. Okay, and Microsoft, by the way, take a look at the differences. So here it says .sw. Notice it says, this is a good example, this is the Swiss exchange, so they sell Microsoft on the Swiss exchange. You're looking for one that says NASDAQ or the NYSE. So the second one is the one that we actually want. So if we compare that, okay, and now you have three lines. So now you have this green line that is Microsoft. And so now you can take a look at the differences and similarities between Apple and the S&P and Microsoft. And so again, you can kind of notice that, look, they all three had that big dip and then that climb back in August. But look at, for example, here with Microsoft back in the beginning of August. Microsoft saw a nice spike here where Apple saw a dip. That tells you, okay, there's something going on with Microsoft. So again, those are big things that you want to take a look at. I really encourage you to take a look at these graphs. Okay. In the next video, I'm going to talk more about some of the other indicators that were on this original page. So some of the things about like volume and PE ratio, dividend yield, those kinds of things. So look for the next video.